Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Innovative and Active Packaging Solutions for the Future of Seafood Trade, brought to you by Seafood Source and sponsored by Aptar Food Protection. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we officially get started today. If you have any technical questions or issues using the WebEx platform, please use the chat box and I will respond right away. If you have any issues with audio, please click on the phone icon above the chat window to receive the teleconference information. For those that do call in, to ensure call quality, everyone's lines have been muted today. If you happen to get disconnected at any time, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your webinar confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulty, please email webinars@seafoodsource.com and we will respond as soon as we can. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation today. Please type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we will have our presenter answer questions, but please do not hesitate to ask your questions during the presentation as they occur to you. This webinar will be recorded and you will receive a thank you email with the on-demand materials within 2 business days. And with all of that out of the way, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Krista Biggs, Manager of Business Development at Aptar Food and Beverage Food Protection. And at this time, I would like to welcome our speaker and hand the webinar off to Krista. Welcome, Krista.
Oh, thank you, Kelsey, and thank you to all of our guests today. I'm super happy to be here. I love doing these webinars with you guys. Today, I will be talking about how active packaging is helping improve the supply chain for seafood, as well as solving critical issues downstream with supermarkets, restaurants, and even consumers. Like Kelsey said, my name is Krista Biggs. I represent the Aptar Food Protection Business Unit. So I know a lot of people try to find us through the regular Aptar website, but please, if you're Googling around, please look up Aptar Food Protection. My background is in different food technologies. I spent the early years of my career working in third-party microbiology laboratories. So I worked a lot in food micro and food chemistry all across the United States, and then moved over to Aptar, doing research and development with them for some time before moving to the business development and commercial side of the business. Just a small agenda insight. I will spend some time introducing Aptar, and then we can discuss the challenges in trade, waste, and consumer sentiment. I'm going to mostly focus these topics on the developed regions in the world, and then all the challenges that have been mitigated with different active packaging formats. So first, a little bit about Aptar, a little bit about our company. The Aptar Group is a global leader in the design and manufacturing of a broad range of drug delivery, consumer product dispensing, and active material science solutions. We do serve a variety of end markets across these 3 major business segments, so pharmaceuticals, beauty and home, and food and beverage. The 4th column that says CSP Technologies, that is my business unit. We are the kind of material science aspect of the whole Aptar group. I do like to share our fun fact with new people and with new listeners. It is that you probably have 7 to 9 of our products in your home. You just maybe aren't aware of it. You didn't know that they were ours. We are a $3 billion company, and we have 13,000 dedicated employees across 20 countries. I do also need to highlight our sustainability efforts within Aptar. Sustainability is very important to us in all things that we do. Aptar is a partner and supporter of many organizations all over the world. We are the pioneer partner for PureCycle in the United States, where we're converting plastic waste into new resin. We made Newsweek's Most Responsible Company list in 2020 and 2021 and hope to make it again this year. We've been one of Barron's Top 100 for 3 years now. And as a female professional, I am happy personally to report that we are number 8 on Forbes' Top 10 female-friendly companies last year. Again, within my specific business unit, we are called Protection. We are the active material science division that develops advanced packaging technologies. We have a large research group. We have polymer scientists, food scientists, chemists, even some statisticians that work on new technologies every day. We started out in 1990 in aseptic testing dairy vials. A few years later, we solved a very special moisture problem with Mars M&Ms. If you've eaten M&Ms before, you may have eaten some of that we have actually packed. And we solved that moisture issue with the technology that did come to be our claim to fame, really. And we called this our three-phase active polymer. That polymer is now used in a lot of these listed products that people count on every day in the pharmaceutical, probiotic, diagnostics, medical device, drug, and delivery spaces. And then more recently, we've brought this to, we've used it as an antimicrobial delivery system on fruits and vegetables. And today, specifically to seafood, I'll let you know how we're also leveraging this active polymer for the seafood industry. We cannot have active packaging, obviously, without a little science. So I must review this slide just briefly and use it to introduce our top technology that makes us special and to introduce the whole topic today of active packaging. This slide represents that three-phase polymer technology that I mentioned, and it's what our new seafood packaging is based on. Our three-phase polymer is an active material science platform that provides customized protection for a variety of products, including seafood. There are nearly half a dozen ways it can be implemented into different manufacturing processes and different types of packaging. And there's dozens of different chemistries on what we can use that polymer to do for food or any pharmaceutical needs. These capabilities listed on the right are examples of the ways in which we can formulate it. So some examples are moisture control, oxygen scavenging, pathogen reduction, odor removal, even color retention. And then one specific technology that we've kind of leveraged from that is Seawell, and now I'll present on that today. We leveraged both our material science expertise as well as some of our sustainable partnerships to develop a unique solution to some of the ever-present seafood challenges across the globe that supermarkets and consumers and even restaurants experience. Challenges that lead to poor quality, high waste, and oftentimes limit seafood distribution. In brief, on this slide, adding the Seawell technology to several applications provides value by collecting liquid and odor for refrigerated seafood packages, whether they were originally packed fresh or packed frozen. And with this, we can reduce bacterial growth, we can contain strong odors, we can even prolong the fresh textures for seafood. We targeted the seafood market because there had been no new developments really in packaging science since the applications of modified atmosphere and vacuum skin pack, and both of those which were developed many years ago. There are, as we know, global efforts to protect and replenish a sustainable harvest and to produce high quality farm products. But more downstream, we look at doing things like trying to reduce our labor costs and reduce our carbon footprints with automation or reduce transport, and as well as find more sustainable packaging. I'll go into a lot more detail about this technology later, but I want to first present a few challenges that make the packaging so important downstream and why we should be thinking about it a little more heavily, especially for seafood and especially for developed regions. Protective and sustainable packaging is necessary because the Food and Agriculture Organization tells us that seafood is the most traded agricultural commodity. Seafood trade is worth the combined value of pork, beef, and poultry, yet seafood is the lesser eaten protein still. I do think that COVID helped that. We gained a lot of new eaters in the category, at least in the United States, which is where I live. Um, and I think we did this because people were becoming more accustomed to cooking at home, or they had time to be more adventurous chefs, and or just simply out of boredom, they were looking for something to do. And of course, they were looking for healthier options. Then and even now, there is still a lot of volatility, uncertainty, and complexity when it comes to the supply chain and trade of this caliber, obviously. And especially when you throw in ongoing COVID concerns, port strikes, China, Russia, and then, as always, an ever-changing consumer, we believe that active packaging can help protect against many of these issues. Maybe not solve, but certainly mitigate the pain points that we have against us. As we look at the state of the market right now, economically speaking, it has been a strange couple of years. Um, Seafood is not known as a cost-effective item. In fact, many people view it as a very premium meal, whether at home or even dining out. Pre-COVID, everything was all about convenient foods and consumers on the go. Then we had a pandemic-induced change in shopping behavior for health reasons, and again, maybe people just in search of new interesting things. Consumer sentiment against seafood was given a chance to evolve during this time, I think. People had time to learn about it. They had time to practice buying and practice cooking it. Many of those previous efforts to attract new eaters, new seafood eaters, and educate consumers on seafood, suddenly those things became heard. The pandemic made consumers ready to listen to how to prepare it, how to eat it, and how much healthier it is for them than the alternative proteins. So for a lot of these things come together, fresh seafood sales tripled in 2020. They grew again in double digits in 2021. And we had hoped that this indicated a sustained increase in demand for what had been the lesser consumed protein. But then the pandemic eases, people get back out, seafood sales in restaurants, they had a chance to bounce back. But then inflation hits us. We saw over 9% in the US and in the EU, we over 10% in the UK. We just kept seeing these huge numbers really all over the world. Everyone has been affected, and it's all driven by different things, of course. And where we're the seafood source today, we've had multiple, even seafood source themselves have had multiple headliners of inflation eating away at retail sales since March. Right now, retailers are opting to not order higher priced items, or we're seeing those they're opt for smaller packages of food to help fight against some of this inflation. For seafood, particularly, the inflation hitting seafood products is outpacing the total grocery inflation. Seafood prices were up 16.8% in July versus a year ago, according to data shared by a tech firm called Numerator. It's been, sort of this demand roller coaster for a long, long time. And with that comes incredible challenges for suppliers, for supermarkets, because consumers are, again, they're cutting back. And restaurants too. Consumers are definitely cutting back on dining out. I myself love to go out to eat. It's one of my favorite things to do. But even I've had to choose wisely recently on dining out. According to another group called Black Box Intelligence, the average guest check increased nearly 7%, which is double long-term norms. Restaurant traffic now has been in a 4-month decline. It was down 4.8% in June, and leading people to a lower intent to return. Seafood, again, being a very premium menu item, is definitely feeling that pain. Products like lobster and crabs have seen as much as a 50% increase in prices. Outside of high-priced items and other inflationary hurdles, retail supermarkets are also under a constant battle with seafood. They worry about how to market it, how to educate consumers, how to best manage their supply. They are up against a constant battle with consumers and their very interesting perception when it comes to what is fresh. They There's not a lot of articles around this or data or research, but it is true, and it tends to be a very common consensus that most shoppers believe that seafood is either fresh or it's frozen. There's kind of nothing in between for them. Experts, of course, understand there's more to it than that, but seafood shoppers love to buy defrosted seafood, even where there may be a little tag or a little notation that it is previously frozen. Defrosted gives them that feeling and perception of fresh. And this phenomena is the reason that supermarkets keep this very beautiful display of seafood on the full service counters, despite the costly disadvantages of labor to manage a fresh counter and the waste that can incur. Retail always battles this, but now in times of inflation, these premium items are being less purchased. Frozen seafood, however, it often does well in times of recessionary pressure. In the mind of the consumer, frozen now tends to have a price advantage. Again, as experts, maybe we know that this isn't necessarily always the case, but it is another long-rooted perception. We, meaning Aptar, we actually recently sponsored a supermarket survey where either seafood category or general managers provided information about what it means to run one of those full service counters for seafood. Their main topics of concern with attempting to manage this fresh case were centered around food safety, labor, and shelf life. On safety, they explain not being able to really trust their workforce to use precautionary measures with cleanliness and temperature abuse. And finding that workforce to begin with has been a growing issue since COVID. In some cases, respondents indicated that there had been a slowdown at the fresh counter due to more online shopping. Not all had this issue, actually not as much as I expected, but some did mention that. And then perhaps the most heavily weighted challenge was noted about short shelf life of products in the case. Most respondents claimed only a 2 or 3 day shelf life max, whereupon the product was then either thrown away or, for some cases, some of those supermarkets had delis, so the product was used at that point in a cooking process or maybe a recipe at the supermarket's deli. The respondents' average for waste at the counter was 10% per day, and they estimated this to be between $50 to $100 per day. So we know this waste and the cost with that waste can add up very quickly. Alternatives to the fresh case is to do self-serve. However, prepackaged options also have their challenges. This is the area that we focus on. This is the area that Aptar is trying to support all around the globe. Prepackaged, as we know, can offer great solutions to the labor and the safety concerns held at the fresh counter. But in order to keep that high quality, that very premium buying experience, packaging it can still be tough. You kind of don't get that same sentiment. You don't get that same excitement buying out of a package than you do at the fresh counter. In the United States, they are subject to a 10,000 oxygen transfer rate requirement on their seafood packages. And so they will oftentimes defrost the seafood inside of the package. They also heavily rely on vacuum skin pack options. This is a pain point to navigate, obviously, due to how much liquid can come off of the seafood in that type of process. It can lead to very poor presentation and very messy leaks. There is just nowhere for that amount of liquid to go off of a product like that, especially in a vacuum skin pack. Retail surveys have also shown us in the past that consumers are not very fond of so much plastic touching the food. So that was interesting for us to learn sometime last year that vacuum skin pack or that kind of overwrap feel, they get the impression that there's too much plastic on the food. Although the EU does not have this particular oxygen requirement, The EU still also has some trouble with liquid and with shelf life, with poor presentation, with modified atmosphere packages. So I guess regardless of how it's being done, prepackaged is difficult to maintain a nice presentation on shelves. And we want it to maintain a shelf life long enough to reach further inland consumers. So we're looking at new ways to do this and to do it better. Yet another global challenge that is possibly stronger than it has been in history is that consumers want to know more about the food that they eat. This applies to all food, and we have rules in the world around how to provide consumers with basic information. And same with seafood. We have rules of how to provide this type of information about seafood. Things like where it was caught, how it was caught, was it farmed, was it wild, is it safe? There's very heavy focus on vessels and suppliers and fishing practices upstream in the supply chain. Strong initiatives are developed around this and achieved through groups like the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership. The Ocean Disclosure Project is another one. There's the best aquacultural practices that are also globally recognized. And the industry relies on constant learnings from several research groups and universities across the globe for continuous improvements in this area. For retailers or supermarkets, they protect themselves through the Marine Stewardship Council Institute. As most of you probably know, this is a nonprofit that helps assess whether seafood items entering the retail stores meet the criteria set forth by that retailer. This is how they can communicate responsibility to consumers. Supermarket initiatives are not only to attract customers to seafood, but also retain their shoppers, retain those shoppers through advertising that they are responsible and they are using and focusing on sustainable practices and partnerships. Any supermarket and especially e-commerce shipping channels tend to be the first victims of that consumer pressure for offering healthy and sustainable food options. Consumers across all generations now are wanting food companies to be responsible for all their practices due to concerns over plastic usage, climate change, food waste. They want all of this, but they also want it and need it to be affordable. And of course, as if all of these things weren't demanding enough, consumers also want it to be easy for them, and they prefer to have positive experiences with all of it. Retail Dive is an interesting study to me. They did a study about how brands suffer from not meeting their customers' expectations and exploring how to define the loss in revenue that results from a bad experience and a non-repeat customer as a result of that. So the report found that 73% of consumers would ghost a brand after 3 or less bad experiences, but that 53% of those same consumers are likely to spread the word to family and friends about their positive interaction with brands. This can happen anywhere in the supply, but is most often is heavily weighted at the point of sale. Supermarkets and delivery need a very high quality product with a clean, non-intimidating experience. In restaurant, however, service and consistency are perhaps the most important. These are huge elements of delivering an enjoyable customer experience. All of this, kind of comes together in trying to offer that positive consumer delivery in all of these supply chains is extra challenging in a post-COVID, labor-constrained, inflationary world. So our overall focus on customer and consumer experience has taken a little bit of a backseat recently because of all of the hardships that we're all having to deal with as businesses and as food suppliers. So what can we do with innovation in packaging to accomplish and mitigate some of these challenges with all of these new hurdles? It can do great things. It is doing great things, actually. These are some of the pain points that new technologies that we've worked on have relaxed in the past 2 years. Food, a lot of food, it must be packaged. People want to knock on packaging these days, but honestly, in order to feed the world, food has got to be packaged at some point to reach most of the world. The world of active packaging, it is complementing upstream practices by improving these downstream challenges that we've looked at, without, mind you, requiring difficult changes in the already very deep-rooted practices of harvesting and processing. It opens up opportunities for suppliers and sellers to improve their supply chain and retain those happy seafood eaters. Seafood, as we have seen, it can be very messy to handle in the home. In some cultures, this is okay. This is not a problem, but in many of the developed regions, it's not very appealing to consumers. For these reasons, supermarket merchandising can be a challenge for prepackaged, refrigerated seafood. Active packaging instead can control that liquid. It can control the slime, the blood, odor, and it can even maintain a fresh texture, as I mentioned before. We did touch on the different pros and cons of a fresh full-service counter, but if we must resort to self-service at times, active packaging provides an improved alternative to the already existing formats for self-serve options. There are now kind of next generation advancements in this type of packaging to handle seafood's undesired yet unavoidable qualities that are oftentimes the reason for the high waste at the retail level. We mentioned that the pandemic may have helped our efforts in onboarding new seafood eaters. People had time to learn how to prepare it, and they opted for it because they were in search of healthier options. But there was still some buying intimidation, I think, in developed regions, especially with the full service cases. Another positive about self-serve packages is that they can offer a nice real estate space for showcasing that product and showcasing some cooking instructions and some recipes. We can also put on there all the traceability information and the sustainability information. But again, adding to that some active packaging technologies to those familiar formats gives the added benefit of being able to do this in a clean and presentable way. If you can market this well enough, you can even maybe inspire impulse purchases from those. Nice, attractive, marketable packaging, as we know, can take sales a long way. And lastly, a package that can provide extra quality benefits without significantly altering current operations can, in many cases, even eliminate steps or even materials, excess materials, extra materials in the supply chain, because the technology can be implemented into existing formats. It can easily be used at the source of operations instead of needing a package conversion down the line. And lastly, it can be a conduit to reaching further destinations and or remote areas with a maintained quality product. To talk about innovation, it can be a challenge. It can be scary because it oftentimes means big change. Big change can mean big cost. And in a time such as right now, more costs are the last thing that businesses can face. That's why I hope that this slide could be of value to anyone interested in understanding how they can bring the innovation to the industry and wants to understand how. To further emphasize and repeat what I said a minute ago, active packaging can complement upstream practices, meaning we can protect all those efforts that we have in sustainable fishing and farming by improving our downstream pain points. Those pain points, as we continue to identify, are lying primarily at the end of the line with supermarkets and with restaurants and with the consumer. Within Aptar, again, this is what we try to do. We strive to be a bringer of innovation to markets in need. We understand that the practices in this industry are very well established. Some practices I've found as old as even a couple hundred years. So active packaging for seafood, I want you to know that it does not have to change that. And it can simply be a value add. The active components I will present in a second are simply a technology that can be incorporated into already existing packaging formats such that it can be easy to adopt. Seafood companies can use this to bring a better product to consumers without changing their existing relationships or partnerships or practices to their fleet, factory, or distribution. The value add benefit of active packaging ultimately resolves challenges for suppliers at the point of sale and for consumers and their experiences with handling that seafood. Seafood suppliers can now deliver instead a versatile prepackaged product that meets any global regulatory requirements. It will result in improved merchandising options for the end seller and for the seafood suppliers themselves. You're going to be able to leverage this to provide end sellers more flexibility with their inventory control, meaning it can offer supermarkets, restaurants, or e-commerce groups either more shelf life or flexibility on refrigerated product to protect against the fluctuations they may have in their supply and demand. I know that sales data is very important. So here I wanted to share a glimpse of how this type of value add that we're talking about also impacts top and bottom lines. This is a bit of sales data proving that there is a demonstrative value proposition and a direct impact on sales following a change toward improvements in packaging and towards using and leveraging active packaging. Our current products in the marketplace improved shrimp sales at a large retailer by 24% in units per store per week. That's what those USW. So 24% in units per store per week from a previous packaging style to an active packaging technology called Seawell. A 28% increase in lobster tails and 57% on scallops. This data was a strong indicator of the continuum and the future of sales for that supermarket. These numbers have continued to improve for the past 2 years now. More importantly, there was great excitement over the significant decrease in markdowns, because this is a direct environmental impact improvement the industry and the retailer contributed to as a result of decreased waste. Again, this is data proving that active packaging complements all those upstream efforts for seafood sustainability. We can contribute to these efforts all the way through the supply chain. It should not be always fully focused on the harvest. We can certainly keep that seafood fresher for longer. So I think I presented, why innovation is needed, and it's been a long time since this industry has seen new innovation and new ways of doing things. Talked through some challenges and presented a few value-added reasons that the technology has had real-life impact and how it can be easily done. But perhaps not everyone knows what active packaging is. I have been using this word a lot, but what is it? Active in our case it consists of a very large portfolio of value-added food protective packaging that can help a range of food safety and shelf life issues, especially and particularly in fresh and raw foods. If you have been with me since the beginning of the webinar, you saw that some of our other product lines, and you learned that our claim to fame was a special polymer that is used in a lot of products that people count on every day. I told you that it solved a special moisture control problem for Mars M&Ms. It's actually used in 95% of the world's diabetic test strip vials. It delivers antimicrobials. It absorbs oxygen. It is a very behind the scenes special application inside of otherwise traditional packaging. An active packaging or an active package is referring to the mechanism of the technology within. This technology, Seawell, has supplied all the progression that I have just explained to you. Active packaging in the case of our Seawell technology, it's been implemented into supermarket supply, into restaurants, and home delivery applications to deliver better and safer products. These images are actually some examples of the solution. And remember what I said, active packaging is typically behind the scenes in otherwise traditional packaging formats. Seawell is offering better presentation in retail. It's offered better handling in e-commerce, and it's allowing frozen to fresh distribution in the United States. It also has a very customizable liquid control. Maybe you need a lot, maybe you don't need so much, you just need a little. And it's also, because it is prepackaged, you've got the option of better seafood traceability and providing less waste and expanded reach. But how does it work? Seawell Protective Packaging Systems, we leverage Aptar's existing material science to create a unique formulation designed to mitigate seafood supply chain issues, as well as freshness and safety challenges. The technology leverages a very unique formulation that absorbs and traps excess liquid and absorbs odor that purge from fresh or frozen seafood. Our patented drip lock technology, that we call it, then holds on to that liquid, separating it permanently from the seafood. This is kind of a combination of function and design that does help improve that texture, control the odor, give a better presentation, and also reduces bacterial growth. By being able to implement this at a factory, it can eliminate conversion steps and take a bite out of those traceability requirements. I can show you a brief video of the function and design in action. I am able to play a short animation of the material science in action. This is a really nice 3D video showing what I just described. It's only 30 seconds long and there's no voiceover, so you won't hear anything, but I will be able to share that with you now. That video, I really like it because I think it helps us understand what happens in well, that was an image of a tray, so it helps us understand what's happening in a tray. But the same mechanism takes place in anything, any pad, any tray, any bag. These are schematics showing the most important features of both a flat bag format and a tray. Looking first at the tray on the left, the trays, this is an example of where we have thermoformed a recyclable tray with cavities in it, where we later drop the Seawell drip lock technology blend into, and then we secure a heat sealed piece of non-woven fabric over top of that. This allows kind of a false floor in the tray, separating the seafood from any standing liquids. The thawed or even naturally released purge from that seafood falls into these cavities. It gets absorbed and controlled by that drip lock technology, preserving the freshness of the seafood. This would be ideal for something with very high excess liquid. Looking at the flat bag format on the right, the absorbent technology is now instead quilted into the back of the pouch, so it's behind the product. And it's going to provide kind of a pillowed effect, separating the seafood from the liquids. Again, the thawed or naturally released liquids seep into these cavities to again be captured and controlled by the same technology. The bag format has quickly become the more popular retail and e-commerce formats. And what's not shown, what we can also do is put the technology inside of a pad. So there's a lot of kind of diaper pads out there. We can actually perform better by putting this technology inside of the pad, or a stand-up pouch. So a stand-up pouch is a very popular retail format. It can go inside of a stand-up pouch as well. So to start wrapping things up, I believe that we're still in a phase of retaining new seafood eaters. The pandemic prompted experimentation. I think maybe it was a catalyst for change. Inflation is not helping that, but as our economies settle back down, I believe this industry is in a perfect position to revitalize the way seafood is offered. I think there's more opportunities now, and there's more reasons than ever before to support all value chains for seafood. For e-commerce, not only can we continue to relieve temperature and parcel abuse challenges with meal kits or direct-to-consumer platforms, but also the more digital we become, supermarkets in developed regions, I know, especially here in the United States, we're transitioning more and more to delivery and fulfillment centers. So not so much of going to the grocery store anymore as opposed to receiving those in from a fulfillment center. So in doing that, to maintain high quality seafood shipments, active packaging formats have provided reprieve to some of those most common challenges in shipping. For restaurants, we can eliminate multiple touch points and long exposure times when having chefs process in the back of the house. When they do this, there is very high potential for cross-contamination, temperature abuse, and other actions that may be detrimental to product quality and consistency. Having a value-added package of this type, it alleviates the need for the rehandling at the end of the shift. The technology, again, is implemented into already existing tray preferences for food service. So it is a technology that can be implemented for that kind of application as well. And then again, lastly, for supermarkets, I think who may be the most challenged, the most attractive way of selling seafood is certainly to have it on display. There's no doubt about that. But as the world changes and resources look more and more different, we can mitigate those display case challenges by still offering a clean, attractive product in a package. Active packaging provides kind of that conduit to being able to package the full service case reputation, with the value added aspects of instead now being able to better control the inventory, reduce the waste, reduce the labor needs, and have around the clock seafood selling hours. To conclude, I think all this stuff is really fun. I personally have had a lot of fun getting into the details of this industry the past few years to try and understand where help is needed and maybe where innovation might be welcomed. Aptar's overarching goal as a company is to design and deliver innovations that make consumers' lives better while adding value to the world's most trusted brands and making a whole meaningful difference in the total marketplace. So with that, I will hand it back to Kelsey, and maybe we can open it up to some Q&A.
Thank you. And that does bring us to the Q&A portion of today's presentation. As a reminder to everyone, if you have not already done so, please type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them. And we've already got a few questions here. Can you describe how the packaging looks with branding on it? I'm interested in how this would look in a retail case.
Sure. So that's it's so because we can implement it into anything, the branding can be on whatever package. It can look maybe exactly like what you have now on a bag or a tray. any sort of film can be printed with your brand. And I didn't get to show it today, but there's a stand-up pouch version that's very attractive for retail, and it's a typical gusseted bottom stand-up pouch. And those are the prettiest and easiest, I think, to add branding to and to add marketing to. But anything could be printed, anything can be kind of made to look very aesthetic and very attractive. That's not an issue.
Thank you. And has there been research into any potential negative interactions between the active ingredient and or the non-woven mat being in contact or in close proximity to the food product?
Yes. So lots of testing is done in that way. We have all certified materials, all food safe materials. We have at least US and EU regulatory documentation and all that testing complete. But if we ever were to be shipping to a new region, we do try to understand what those local regulatory um, certifications are and do all the testing necessary to meet those. Regarding so that would kind of answer any sort of films or resins or the non-woven answer. But the technology itself is food safe. It's direct food contact safe. It's GRAS certified, so generally recognized as safe by the FDA. It's the ingredients within are actually safe for food inclusion. Not that you want to eat it, but if you were to eat it, it would be very, very safe. Nothing would happen. Everything would be fine. Some of the ingredients actually used in that are in products that we eat now. So things like jams, jellies, gravies. So very, very safe.
Thank you. And can this be used for ROP or MAP packing?
I'm not familiar with ROP, but MAP being modified atmosphere, absolutely. So this it wouldn't change anything about that gas flush. It wouldn't change anything about the modified atmosphere headspace needs. It would simply be there for liquid and odor and bacteria control. We would probably, in that case, maybe want to look at a pad, like an absorbent pad format that would go into the bottom of that package. But it would not affect the map, no.
Thank you. And there are a couple people interested in the extended shelf life that can be achieved specifically for fresh gutted fish or raw and cooked shrimp products.
Sure. So I wish we packaged more whole fish. The technology works very well on whole fish, but it's more heavily used right now in the United States, and that's not a widely purchased item. We will. So the whole fish, there's one application where it is being packed. It's going into a larger food service tray. It's performing extremely well, particularly to some kind of yeast and molds that may develop on those fish. So we are reducing certain bacterial growths, certain mold or fungi growths that do occur on that fish. And for that reason, that's what we're calling shelf life. And we are getting a couple, 1 to 2 extra days off of that fish. For shrimp, we do a lot of shrimp SKUs in both trays and different pouch type of formats. The shrimp perform very well. And I'm not actually antimicrobial in this package, but because of the mechanism of controlling that liquid, what's happening at more of a micro level is we're collecting that liquid and actually binding it on a chemical level, so therefore it is not being able to be used for any chemical reactions that are breaking down the texture of that product or to be used by the bacteria. They need food and water to grow. They've got the food there, but if we can hold that water away from them, that's why I like to say reducing the bacterial growth. So it's still there. We're not killing it all, but we're certainly slowing down the rate of that growth and therefore prolonging that freshness, giving a few extra days of shelf life for that product. But no, both of those product, whole fish and shrimp, are very good applications for this technology.
Thank you. And another question here. Can I use this packaging for ready-to-eat microwave products?
Can. So the technology is fine in the microwave. There's no issue there. We've done it before. It's actually something that we're playing around with now. Where that would have hurdles is microwavable films. So we would just have to make sure that we're using what would otherwise be a microwavable safe package. And then we could implement the technology um, however we needed to. And it itself is safe in the microwave. Yes.
Thank you. And is there an improvement in the appearance of frost for frozen products?
So trying to think about what that what the what the goal is of that question, or what the thought process behind it. So if the product is frozen, mostly it's in a very high barrier film to protect against frostbite. There's typically glaze on the product to also protect it. Um, I don't know why you would want to use the technology inside of there unless you're just trying to not form ice crystals or something on the package, but um, it's certainly something that we can talk about. Encourage that question, the person to reach out to me, just kind of see where their head's at on that. Um, the frozen applications that we apply to right now are because the product is intended to be thawed or defrosted inside of the package. So that's why it's in there. But I don't know so much that the technology is providing much value only in that frozen state. But certainly something that we can discuss.
Excellent. Um, and another question, do we still need to place TTI units into the packages to indicate the spoilages in case we have, if we do have them due to temperature fluctuations?
If you want to, so those indicators are not, it's a technology in the package that's there to, help control the liquid, help control the odor, help control the quality parameters of that product. It's going to be there to help. That time TTI is going to tell you about the environmental aspects and how that product was treated. So to add active packaging technologies, you're further giving yourself more insurance to protect that product. I wouldn't say that it would be up to you if you wanted to get rid of the TTI and maybe monitor those types of things in a different way. But it wouldn't be a trade-off. It's still not going to give you that indication. There's other reasons why you would use a TTI to kind of monitor that product and make sure that it was handled the way in which it should be. And you could certainly still do both, but I don't. Again, active packaging would even be more of insurance and protecting that. So um, two totally different applications.
Thank you. And with this active technology, do we still need to place absorbent pads for MAP?
So we could, if you're already doing that, we could replace the pad that you're using. So I could put the active packaging, the active technologies inside of a pad format, inside of the pad that you're using. And for that reason, you may get some improvements in texture, improvements in odor, improvements in bacteria growth. Um, but to do that in the pad, your other applications wouldn't change. So you could still use the same tray and still use the same map procedures.
And what kind of temperatures can this kind of packaging sustain? Can I freeze the products along with the trays?
Yes, yes. So this is we have a lot of that comes on the spec sheets about the packaging itself, but or about the technology itself. But um, right now, it's the one of the programs in the United States that's packaging IQF product and defrosting in the package. Sometimes it does stay in that frozen state for quite some time, up to 6 months or more. So no worries and no. Well, I'll expand on that a little bit. No worries as a as the technology is in the frozen state, but also we've had instances where people want, it's defrosted, it's thawed, the technology has had an opportunity to work, it's had an opportunity to do its job, but consumers, especially in a case right now where maybe they want to um, buy lots of food, buy bulk food, they still take it home and put it back into the freezer. So that would be kind of a full cycle, and then it goes back into the freezer, and then it may be gotten out later, thawed out again, defrosted again to be ready to cooked. All of that is fine and safe, and the technology is still going to work.
Excellent. And I think we have time for a couple more questions. How has Seawell adapted for different regions across the globe?
Good question. So kind of similar to one of the questions a few minutes ago, where we have certified materials for the regions that we know we're going to be selling in. Um, the food the raw materials for the technology is food safe. Those we haven't had trouble applying. We always are focused on those local regulatory adaptations. So one example is that's a perfect correlation is or comparison really is the EU versus the US with their different regulatory requirements, because it's just a technology that can be implemented into already existing formats and to already existing ways of doing things and already existing regulatory um, requirements. We kind of fit into what's already there. It's just kind of the technology itself, the active components that we work with, and those we just go through the process again. This is what it is. We work with local regulatory bodies, even local lawyers if we have to kind of work through all of that to make sure that we are providing an approved application to that region.
Thank you. And what is the closest competitive option to this technology?
Honestly, um, there's a lot of odor control things out there, and there's different like CO2 pad emitted things. And then for liquid absorption, really, there's just the synthetic kind of diaper uh, pads that are out there. But those perform by initially collecting liquid, but they don't really control it. They don't provide that extra value add that an active technology could do. So really, I would just say the synthetic pads, there's really no markets on the similar products on the market that I can think of.
Thank you. And that is all the time that we have for today's program. I just have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we officially close out today. If you could please fill out the short evaluation form that will appear when you close the webinar, this will help us better serve your needs in future webinars. And as a reminder, I've had many people asking me, the on-demand materials will be emailed to everyone within 2 business days, and this will include the link to the recording of today's presentation as well as a PDF of the slides. And thank you again to Krista for a great presentation today. And thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. This webinar was sponsored by Aptar Food Protection and brought to you by Seafood Source. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye bye.